Tonight you have Charter Ordinance number 26 before you. The Charter Ordinance is presented as a follow-up to discussion at the workshop on May 5th. You'll recall we had 5 key points that were presented for deliberation. They involve looking at the quorum, city's classification, the election systems, considering eligibility for office, and council member appointments. The first item, quorum, is addressed in section 4. The discussion by council was whether to consider having a supermajority, meaning 4 members, or a majority, 3 members, that would be required for a quorum. The council direction to staff was that we have 4 members unless we have a vacancy on council. At that time, we would reduce the number from 4 to 3 council members. Special meetings would still be called by the mayor and the written request of any 3 council members. The second item that was discussed was city classification. In the Charter Ordinance 19, Section 2B references language that is obsolete because it talks about moving to a different city class. So based on the advice of legal counsel, we removed that language, and council direction was that we would remain a city of the second class until such time that our population requires us to evaluate and move to a city of the first class. The third item addresses the election systems. Council discussed looking at at-large elections versus district elections or wards. The direction to staff was that we would remain with at-large elections and we would not be moving to a ward system at this time. The fourth item dealt with eligibility for office and a qualified elector. You'll recall staff presented at the workshop that the statutes require a 3-pronged test. You must be a citizen of the United States, you must reside in the state, and you are required to be 18 years of age. Under council member appointments, we presented discussion items regarding several jurisdictions throughout Johnson County. They were about half and half, with some requiring the governing body along with the mayor, others requiring the mayor to do an appointment for a vacant council seat. In the Charter Ordinance 19, we had suitable elector. We've replaced that with qualified elector as directed by council, and we've amended the language such that the governing body shall appoint a qualified elector instead of the mayor recommended to the governing body an appointment. The timeline for approval for the Charter Ordinance is a little bit different than a regular ordinance. First, it requires that all members of the governing body vote, and for approval, we need a supermajority. The first step is tonight, where we would ask for your approval of Charter Ordinance number 26. On the 21st, we would do the first publication in the newspaper. On the 28th of May, we would do the second publication. There is a required waiting period of 61 days, and the ordinance would not become effective until July 29th. So if you approve tonight Charter Ordinance number 26, staff will proceed with the 2 publications and the waiting period. Once the ordinance takes effect on July 29th, we will bring back to you the governing body rules and procedures. You'll recall that once we developed the governing body rules and procedures, we developed them consistent with Charter Ordinance 19, so there are some cleanup items that we'll need to bring back to you in the governing body rules and procedures. Any questions at this time after comments from the public?
If there's anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment regarding new business item number 10, now would be your opportunity to step forward and be heard.
I'm Rich Melton, and my address is 521 East Hawthorne. I would think that should be something in there about persons living in the city. I think it's important that if people are going to be on council, be the mayor, they live in this town. I mean, we're a representative republic. I mean, that's what it's all about, from all the way down from the top. I don't know why the city can't see that and apply those same things. I mean, we've got a great example of why it's important right now. I think council ought to think about that real hard. Thank you.
I guess I want to echo some of what Rich said, but I also want to make sure I'm clear on this. If I'm understanding your proposed approval of this charter ordinance, you're saying that the only qualifications to serve on this city's council, you got to live and be a resident of Kansas and be 18. That seems foolish, people. And if you vote to approve it, I think the voters deserve to ask that question of why you would do that.
With nobody else coming forward. Cheryl, if you want to come back. Can you speak to the concerns of the public?
Yes, the statutes, when we refer to the statute definition, the statutes speak to the residency for the city. Because it speaks to wards, which we don't have wards, but it would be the district or the area that you're representing, which would be the city.
That didn't show on the display anywhere.
It's in the statutes.
Yeah, Cheryl's right.
It's the instant statutes.
Yeah, I think the direction that you gave was, you wanted to go with, what I understood and what I drafted, you wanted to go with what the statutes said as to the qualifications for elected office, and the statutes, basically, 14205 dictates that for a council member to be qualified for the position of councilman, they have to be a qualified elector of the city. So they do have to be residents. That's right.
It wasn't necessarily detailed.
Register to vote.
Right. It wasn't detailed within the presentation itself that you saw on the screen, but the verbiage is governed by the state statute, which is 14-205, is where that verbiage is detailed and listed from start to finish. So that's where we'll have that within it.
Right.
That would seem to be important to display for citizens when you're making a presentation.
Does somebody have 14205?
Yes, 14205, we have 14205. What council directed staff to do was utilize the definition that's in the statute, or use the statute language such that if there was a change in the statute, that it would automatically change the requirements for the city as well. And it speaks specifically to a qualified elector of the city.
Right.
So it addresses that you would have to be a resident, because you wouldn't be able to be a qualified elector of the city unless you are a resident of the city.
That's correct.
And those statutes were available in the council action form that's available on the City of Gardner website. So you would have been able to access that information there and see what statutes were applied.
I've got state Kansas statutes annotated, bookmarked on my browser at all.
If
You know, you
council
can,
workshop package,
it's pretty
have
easy
it.
to find. And honestly, if you put in Kansas statutes 2014, it'll take you right to the legislators' webpage with the most up-to-date listings. Any other questions for Cheryl regarding new business item number 10?
I'd like just to discuss the details of council member appointments. I know we talked about that, and I understand we'd have to update the reference guide for the governing body rules and procedures, but what is the predicted details of how that process would be handled?